everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to Taylor Made Cards for You. Well, with hopefully the last snow behind us, I thought it was time to make some spring cards. And I know pastels are not my colors, but I wanted to create some beautiful spring cards just to kind of help spring along. And I'm using some wonderful products from Cathe Holden that I'll be sharing with you today. Now, if you're not familiar with Cathe Holden, she's a vintage crafter as well, kind of like Tim Holtz, and I have never used her products, but I've been eyeing her products for some time, so I decided to go ahead and give them a try. Now she's coming out with a new release in about 5 days, so I went ahead and I purchased some of her older product just to give it a try and try it out to see how I like it. I also pulled out some of these beautiful teacup florals and some of these Remnant Rubs from 49 and Market to put together some wonderful spring cards. So let's go ahead and get to it. Now these Teacup Flowers are printables, and I went ahead and I printed them out and I created cute little packets that you can purchase in the shop. If you recall, I created these cello envelopes on one of my lives several weeks ago, and I stuffed them with ephemera pieces, and some of the ephemera pieces that are in these are spring florals. So if you want to try to duplicate these cards, you can find some of these printables and some great spring stickers in my shop. Alright, so the first thing that I did is I wanted to create some backgrounds, and you probably are surprised to see a spray bottle because I never use spray bottles. It's something that I just don't typically go to. I love stenciling and I love adding ink to stencils, but typically I don't use spray bottles because they just tend to get a little bit messy. Now I know that you can put them in a box and you can do all sorts of little tips and tricks to have the splatters stay together, but that just seems like too much work for me. So I just grabbed some oversized paper and I covered my desk, and we're going to go ahead and give it a whirl. Now I keep my stencils on that ring, binder ring that you just saw, and I got that tip from the master himself, from Tim Holtz. I saw him do it one time on his one of his live videos, and I decided if it was good enough for Tim, it was good enough for me. And I have all of my stencils on a ring, and I put them on my filing cabinet handle, so that way they're easy access. So I cut out some heavy cardstock, and I just decided to just kind of spritz my stencils, and really no rhyme or reason. I just wanted to create some sort of a pastel pink background, and I wanted it to have a pattern. So that's what I'm doing here. I have no rhyme or reason. I'm just pretty much spraying my stencils, taking the excess on the top part and pushing it down onto my white cardstock. And I'm just going to continue to do this with a variety of stencils. As you can see, some of the stencils are a little bit darker than others because I've turned it over and used some of the negative part of the stencil. And then I decided to go ahead and mix and match my stencils. Like I said, I really didn't have any rhyme or reason. At this point, I just kind of put 4 pieces of cardstock down and I just started spraying. I knew that I would be layering these cards and I'd be adding ephemera and stickers and embellishments, so I really just wanted to pull some pink color into my background, and I wanted it to be somewhat random. Now I knew that I was going to be also trimming down this paper. I started out with 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but I was going to trim down the white cardstock to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And that is strategic because I like to mat my cards with some solid cardstock, and then I also like to have a 1/4 of an inch border from the base of my white cardstock. So I knew I would be trimming these cards, so they're going to be looking a little bit more organic than just random sprays. So I took a minute to let the ink spray dry. You could get out your heating tool if you wanted to, but I just kind of set mine aside and let them start drying. And then I decided to go ahead and trim them like I indicated, and this is what I ended up with. Now we're going to be making 10 cards, and you're going to see that these cards are going to go pretty quick. Most of them are going to be similar because, again, I'm using the pink background, and I'm also using the floral and teacup embellishment as my focal point. So once my ink was dry, I decided I did want to have somewhat of a shadow effect on the outside. So what better ink to use than the new Distress ink from Tim Holtz, which is Lost Shadow. And this ink is fantastic. I've been playing with it a little bit, and it's very subtle. I knew that it was going to be a very light gray, and I love how subtle it is. The background creates a very fine shadow effect, so the naming of the ink and the oxide was perfect. So well played, Mr. Holtz. So I added the Lost Shadow Distress ink. I didn't use the oxide, I used the actual ink around the edges, and then once I had all of the gray tone around the edge, you can see it's just really subtle and it really does add to the background. Then I decided to go ahead and pull out some of those Remnant Rubs and add those. Now what I really like about the 49 and Market Remnant Rubs is a couple things. Number one, it has color. Most of the Remnant Rubs that I've used in the past are the black and white ones from Tim Holtz. And don't get me wrong, they are my favorite. But I really liked the fact that I found these 49 and Market Remnant Rubs with some pops of color for my spring cards. Now, if you've never used Remnant Rubs before, they're kind of like decals. You have a stylus or some sort of a tool to rub the image onto your cardstock. And these don't get a lot of attention, in my opinion. I think the Remnant Rubs are great, and I just love it when I find them because, number one, they're just really unique and you can be really random about it. And then number two, also with the Tim Holtz ones, they're a little bit smaller, so they're great just to fill in white space. So I just want to give a shout out to these Remnant Rubs, and I hope that they never go away. So please use them, give them a try. I've loved them for my backgrounds and adding to the interest of my cards, and I will continue to use them as long as they're available. Now, when you are using these Remnant Rubs, keep in mind that when they touch paper, they will start to stick. So that's the reason why I tend to cut out the image that I'm going to use, because if I just pulled off the entire sheet and started placing them down, if any other parts of other images touch the white paper, then they would start to stick. So you do have to be somewhat careful when you are using the Remnant Rubs and make sure that you are only adhering the part of the image that you want to go onto your cardstock. So as you can see, I just continue to add these Remnant Rubs to the pink background, just really random. I kind of took in consideration an idea of where I might be placing my teacups, because I certainly didn't want to cover my Remnant Rubs. So I would either put them on the top left-hand corner or towards the bottom, because I knew that the teacups would be more towards the middle, and I wanted the Remnant Rubs just to work as background. Now, if you have layered cards before using ephemera and stickers and Remnant Rubs, then you know that it could be pretty random. A lot of times when I am creating my layered cards, I really don't know exactly what I'm going to do. Whereas with stamping, I typically already have a layout in mind. But with layering and with collaging, I just really keep moving items until I think that I have the look that I want. I certainly do try to match my colors, taking into consideration the fact that I am using pinks and teals. I wanted to kind of keep that in mind. I also had some orange and green, so that's the type of ephemera that I was going for. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on some music while we go ahead and collage these 10 cards, and then I'll be back in the end of the video just to wrap it up. So as you can see, my process of layering is just pretty random. I just kind of take my focal point and I work around it. I don't have any rhyme or reason when I'm going into the layering. I just look through the pieces that I have, whether it's stickers, embellishments, ephemera pieces, and then I just start to work with it. Now I have to admit, sometimes stickers can be a little bit more difficult because when I am putting together a layout, I like to move my ephemera around. And with a sticker, you can't really lay it down because it's going to stick to your paper. So that's the only thing that I would say is if you are working with stickers, just make sure that you hold it up against your focal point just to see if it's going to complement. All right, so for the last two cards, I didn't have an actual teacup and tulip image. So I decided to go ahead and use some oversized flowers that were part of the Cathe Holden collection. So for this first card here, I just pulled out one of these oversized stickers, which has a beautiful rose on it. And then I found a complementing butterfly. And then I'm going to also just put a little label on the bottom that I will be putting a sentiment on. So this worked out really perfectly. Just with 3 little stickers and some background, I have a really beautiful floral spring card. And then for the next card, again, I am going to find another floral image. And I'll do the same thing, just kind of working with the color palette. This one actually was a little bit too big, so I had to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and find another floral that would work for this size of card. And then again, just find some complementary pieces to go along with it. And then once I was finished adding my stickers and my embellishment, then I decided to go ahead and pull out some of my vintage tickets. I had some 40-cent ticket stubs, and then I also had some pink tickets that said admit 1, and I just kind of coordinated them against the actual cards to be able to add extra focal points. So if you noticed when I was working with some of the ephemera pieces, specifically the teacups and the flowers, I only put the adhesive right down the middle, and I left the edges of the ephemera pieces loose because this is a little trick that I have that if I am not exactly sure what layering I'm going to use, but I do know what my focal point is going to be, I'll go ahead and I'll adhere my focal point, just putting glue right down the middle of it, so that way I can still tuck ephemera pieces as I go along. And another thing I wanted to mention, and you're going to be seeing me here do this in just a minute, is if you have some ephemera pieces, and let's just take the tickets for example, and you know that you're going to be layering it, one of the tricks that I do is to cut it in half, so that way I can layer 2 pieces for the price of 1 ticket. Some of the layering, of course, is going to get covered, so you don't necessarily have to cover the whole ticket. You can just cover part of it. So if you have a number you want to use, or if you just want to maybe have part of the ticket showing, cut your ephemera in half so that way you can get double the use out of it. And then once I was finished with all of my embellishments and my ephemera and all of my layering, then I did get some teal cardstock, and I cut it down because I was going to go ahead and use that to layer my images. Now for these particular cards, because I am creating note card sets, I wanted them all to match. So I did end up using all teal for these cards, and I'm going to go ahead and just layer my pieces onto this, and then I will add those to the white cardstock. And then to finish off the cards, I did do a nice thin layer of Collage medium right over all of the ephemera pieces. I have the Collage medium in both matte and vintage, and the vintage just has more of a brown tone to give it more of a vintage look. So I hope that you've enjoyed my process today for creating these wonderful, beautiful, vibrant spring cards. Like I said, this typically isn't my color palette, but I definitely wanted to get in the spring mood, and these certainly did the trick. Now, as a reminder, this is the Cathe Holden collection. This isn't necessarily her newest collection, but it is a wonderful collection. It has some great floral and spring stickers. It's got some wonderful stamp sets to create some beautiful spring cards. And then as a reminder, she is going to be coming out with a new release in about 4 days, and I'll have another video for you then as well. So be sure to check out Cathe Holden's sets. You can check them out over at Spellbinders, and I'll make sure that I leave some links for you in the description box below. Right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.